Hey guys, Toby Morrison here. I just wanted to do this video over here on the whiteboard for all of you guys who are struggling with chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. This is not just for you, but this is for your family as well, because I know how hard it is for family members to really understand what's going on with you, and sometimes it can cause a lot of tension and there's just a lack of understanding and knowledge and support around this entire topic. So I thought I'd just make it really simple for people who don't have CFS to understand what's going on with their loved ones, so it makes sense and they can maybe help a little bit. And this is also for you if you do have CFS. This will really relate. So if you're here, this is a person who is currently suffering from CFS. Now, there's two sides to this. There's the really dark side, the bad side, the stuff that we go through, the symptoms, the stress and the worry and the emotional pain. But then there's also a good side, and there's also something that can come from this situation. We can change it. Really what happens with chronic fatigue syndrome is you're living a normal life. A bunch of things happen, whether it's work, stress, virus, infection, a traumatic event or traumatic events over a period of time, and things just start going downhill. And usually it's a trigger. Usually it's either one thing, or usually it's a bunch of things that happen over a period of time, and all of a sudden the body just can't handle that kind of stress anymore, whether it's physical, emotional, or both. And what happens is, your immune system gets worse, and eventually your body just kind of shuts down. And what happens with that, you get a bunch of symptoms. Usually 8 or more symptoms persist for a period of 6 months before you get diagnosed. But what happens is you're not only dealing with the symptoms, but you're dealing with a whole lot of emotional chaos. And chronic fatigue syndrome isn't in the mind. Because it's a very neurological, physical illness. You don't just make this stuff up. It's something that's very real. And most people with chronic fatigue syndrome are high achievers, people who want to get the most out of their life. They're not people who sit on the couch and just, are lazy all the time. So that's really, really reassuring to know, I'm sure. But what happens when this person who is living a normal life can't live a normal life anymore? They start to feel all this stuff. And this is really important for family members to understand, because if you can't do the thing, let's just say this person's name's Erin, and Erin was an elite sports player. She was always bubbly. She was always, really popular at school. And all of a sudden, Erin can't do what she used to be able to do, and she's in bed. She's sick and she's sore, and she's got all these symptoms like brain fog, pain, neurological symptoms, fatigue, weak immune system, muscle aches, flu-like symptoms, swollen glands, all those kinds of things, dizziness, sensitivities, decondition. So Erin's going through all this stuff, and she can't be the Erin that everyone knows her to be. So what do you think happens up here? Stress, anxiety, worry, shame, guilt, feeling depressed, anger, frustration, stuck. And so the problem that happens is that Erin can't do the stuff over here anymore. She's literally she can't be the person that everyone knows her to be and herself to be. So it's a huge emotional roller coaster that Erin is going to go through. And I'm sure if you're going through chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia, you're probably going through something similar. Okay, it's like what happens is the carpet gets swept from underneath your feet, and you literally don't even know where to land. And so this is why it's really important for family members to know what is actually going on here with the shame, the guilt, and the worry, because it's not an emotional problem, but the problem creates emotional issues. Because when you can't live the life that you want to live, it really causes a lot of pain. A lot of emotional pain. So it's really important to understand that, because not only are you dealing with the physical stuff, post-exertional malaise, memory loss, dizziness. I've said all these things. Poor sleep. That's a really confusing one. Most people with chronic fatigue syndrome actually don't sleep well, whereas most people, on the outside think, oh, you just sleep all the time. You're just lazy. Wake up earlier. And so it's really important for people who know someone with chronic fatigue syndrome understand that this is not just like a day where you're just a little bit tired and you can't think straight. This is like months and months on end, or sometimes years for people, where it's continuous brain fog, where you can't even read more than a sentence or a paragraph, where you're fatigued so friggin' full on that you can't even have a shower because it's so exhausting, where it constantly feels like you've got a flu. Irritability, swollen glands. So that's just what someone with chronic fatigue syndrome has to deal with on a day, and obviously it varies from individual to individual. But imagine just that, on top of that, you can see how hard it is actually going through a traumatic experience like this. Because there's a lot of shame and guilt that people experience with chronic fatigue syndrome, because they can't do what they want to do for other people. And they, one of the biggest things with chronic fatigue syndrome and the guilt and the shame that people have with their family is that they wish they could just get better so that their mum and dad and people around them didn't have to see them suffering. And it's the worst when you're going through chronic fatigue syndrome and you're the sufferer, seeing your family care and stress and worry about you so much. It's almost harder than the illness to see that. You don't want to. You just wish it would just go away, so your mum and dad could just not have to stress and worry about you all the time. That's a really important topic to talk about, because if you are a parent or a loved one who's going through this, adding more stress and worry and anxiety and shame and guilt and anger and frustration to someone who's already in that kind of situation and area is not going to help the situation. And I'm going to talk to you about how we can help that in a second. But as hard as it is for anyone who's suffering with chronic, who's watching a loved one suffer, if you can just understand this with this, it's going to make it a lot easier to maybe have more, an empathetic response to maybe when someone, gets a bit pissed off, or when your loved one gets really angry and frustrated or anxious and stressed. It's just important to know that, because I think it's a really hard thing to go to. And look, no one wants to go through this. Your family doesn't want to go through this. You don't want to go through this. I totally, no one wants to experience this. But the reality is, this is reality right now for your situation. And the reality is it can change too, and it can get better. But it's just important to realize that none of you wished it upon anyone. And, you're just going to do the best you can. It's not going to be perfect. You're going to have arguments. You're going to feel angry and frustrated. But if you can have, one key thing is to have open communication, to talk and share about how you're actually feeling. And also putting up boundaries. If you can actually just say, hey, mum and dad, look, rather than keep on asking me how I am all the time and really worrying about me, how about you just ask me once a day? Or how about I just tell you if I'm really struggling, I'll just tell you, and we can have that kind of communication. This really helps clear up the boundaries, and then that way, you can kind of make it easier and make it work around it. Now, we're going to talk about the proactive stuff. So there's that side of chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia and ME, which everyone experiences, and this stuff can keep us really stuck. And by the way, this is all secondary. This is a secondary response for suffering in the physical pain and symptoms. Okay, it's not all in the head. Okay, this is a secondary response from that. This means that stress because you can't do the things that you once were able to do. You worry because you don't know what the future looks like. You have the shame and guilt with your family because your family is spending lots and lots of money on you. They're taking you everywhere, and you just can't improve. Depressed, anger, frustration. You don't have depression because you've got depression. Not that that's a problem, but people go through that. But you're depressed because you feel guilty and shameful that you can't, help your mum and dad or your loved one get better as soon as possible. You're depressed because you're mourning the life that you once lived before. That's absolutely appropriate. It's an appropriate response. And now, obviously, we don't want to stay in that, but it's understanding that is the situation and the reality. Now, if we look over here, if we can work on that stuff, but then come over here and get into this side of it, which is relaxation, calm and confident, forward thinking, proactive, not reactive, unstuck, rational and understanding on a path to move forwards. When people get that, they start to improve. When people start to not worry about the future, but actually start to have a plan, a methodical plan moving forwards on a holistic level in terms of their health, they start to move forwards. It's really simple. Same thing with being unstuck. When you're stuck, you can't get out of your own head, you're frustrated, you can't move with your body because you're exhausted. When we get unstuck, energy starts to flow out and we start to be able to do more things without feeling worse. Obviously, it's all about doing what's appropriate for the individual and building up slowly and progressively over a period of time. There's no magic quick fix, and I think it's really important for family members to know, don't try and look for quick fixes all the time for people, for your loved one, as much as you really want. Sometimes researching and showing them more is like, you know when it's just awkward and it's just like, go away, I just don't even want you to do this or help me. Let the person find their help themselves. Obviously, if you find something useful, hey, look at this, I just found this, have a look at it. But don't say, you need to do this and you need to do that, because it's just not going to help the situation. You need to let the person, the individual who's going through the experience, to come to their own conclusions, to go, you know what, I need to do something about my own health and life to improve it. And obviously asking for support through that would be really beneficial. Now, what happens when we start to do all this, we start to have a more functional brain. We start to get an improved strength and stamina. We start to have better energy, improved sleep. Body function is a lot better, finer motor skills, quicker recovery after movement and exercise, relaxed muscles, better gut function, physically conditioned. When all this happens, the person comes back to the person. And the person starts to love more, the person starts to engage more, the person starts to laugh more. One of the great signs of recovery is laughter, is that, and cheekiness, and the old personality coming back in. And that is a fantastic sign to see. So, there's lots of different signs, obviously, physical improvement, mental clarity, things like that, symptoms decreasing. But one of those key factors is having fun, and just the old personality coming back. And sometimes the annoying personality coming back, and it's just like, oh my God, like that's the old you coming out and you're annoying me, but that's like what you did when you were healthy. So anyway, it's just really important to have a really easy understanding, but also be empathetic to it. And I feel for you. It's friggin' tough. It's tough for a family member. It's tough for mums, especially. I know what it's like. But you also need to realise that there's hope and that there's a possibility and there's potential for everybody to make improvements, whether it's 5%, 10%, 20%, 50%, 100%. Just focus on these small improvements. And timing is everything. So I'm just going to walk back so you can see that. And so there's two sides to the equation. There's the dark side and there's the light side. This is hope, this is recovery, this is improvement, this is potential, this is current reality for some people. And this can be transformed to this. And when it's transformed to that, this becomes a happy person. Yeah? So my invitation is to have open communication, be hopeful, and surround yourself with things that are going to be useful for you. Let the person come to their own conclusions. Ask for help. I think that's really important, and get rid of the shame and guilt. And the only way that happens is by having an open communication with your loved ones, and have a plan. Like have a plan that works for you individually. When you have a plan that works for you individually, you can really move forwards in the direction that you want to go. And not everyone's going to be supportive, but and not everyone's going to have the luxury of that support and love. But do the best you can with what you've got. There is a lot of help out there, and there's a lot of practical help. My last piece of advice is don't look for the magical cure. Look for stuff that's just going to help you on a day-to-day basis. The practical stuff. No one can change you but yourself. There's a lot of people who can help you and influence your life, but no one can actually make the changes for you. So it's really up to you to make those changes and get a really good support team around you to help you make those changes. You can do it on your own as well. Yeah. Again, if you don't have the support from loved ones and family, then look outside of that. Look at getting a coach or seeing people or friends or strangers who might be able to help with you, and find people who've gone through your experience and done well from it and gotten better and improved. But yeah, the key things here, guys, is communication, open communication with respect and honesty, planning for the future, and having a plan, and then literally getting a support team to make it a holistic approach to move forwards in the directions that you want. Because we know, if we look at this is very much physical. So physically, we need to have a plan for the quality of sleep, the nutrition, the restorative movement, the rebuilding of your body. And then also we need help with this kind of stuff, the secondary responses of feeling the stress and the anxiety and the worry and the shame and the anger and the frustration. Because when you get help on that and you get work on that, then it gives you the mental clarity to focus on this stuff, which is forward thinking, proactive, not reactive, having an understanding, getting relaxed, and having a path to follow to move you towards better. So I hope that helps. I hope that gives you a really clear, simple understanding of what it's like to have chronic fatigue syndrome. I probably didn't do it justice in the sense of how severe it can get for people. Obviously, it can be as bad as being completely bedbound and not being able to move. We've had people in our program who haven't left the house in years, apart from appointments. Showering can be hard. Literally, just sitting in a car can cause major issues and sensitivities and things like that. So obviously it can be quite severe. It can be life-changing within an instant. But the most important thing that I want to share with you is that it can get better too. It doesn't matter how bad you are, there is always potential to improve. And I've seen it time and time again. People who, like I said before, who didn't leave their house for 7 years and now living a very highly functional life, got the quality of life back, walking along the beach, catching up with friends, driving, hours in the car, not overnight, but over a period of time. And it's really important to know that it's possible. So hope that helps, guys. If you're a family watching this, my love to you. Hope it all goes well. And if you need help, reach out. Obviously, send us an email or go to our website, www.cfshealth.com. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.